Okay. Hello and welcome to another episode of Colton Vita. We are in for a new season. This season, it's going to be called You Need to Start Now. And we're going to have this season's going to mainly be about the foundation of financial freedom. And there's going to be three main parts. And today we're going to talk about the main part. And today's episode is going to be about life creep. What is life creep? And how can it help you on that first step towards financial freedom? Now, this isn't going to be a step by step in reference to financial freedom. It's going to be more about a philosophical foundation or a mindset foundation in reference to getting to financial freedom. In other words, the basis you need to then find your way to financial freedom. So, to start, we're going to start with life creep. What is it? I think the best way to start life creep for me is to tell my mentor story in which I was at some social engagement, and my mentor saw me, came over to me, was really excited, and told me, "You like ramen?" Or asked me, and I was like, "Yeah." I think he had seen me eat ramen, and I was very, very enthusiastic about eating ramen. I mean, I still love ramen. And he was like, "Eat ramen forever, or as long as you can." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, and then whatever money you save, invest it. And I was like, and do that for everything. And that was all he told me. And at the time, it kind of went over my head. I kind of had an idea what he was saying, you know, eat cheap, save money, invest. But this idea can be applied to all of your life in reference to life creep is what you are using right now. And so if you bring in this amount of money and your life is here, then you're gonna have no money to save. What you want is as you progress, as you make more money, for that to keep going up, and then that difference to be what you save. Because one of the biggest foundations or biggest elements to this foundation is saving. And how do we do that, right? How do we save? And you have to understand that difference to be able to save. And so I can't stress enough that life creep is going to be critical for you to save, because if you don't have that difference, there's nothing to save. And in the beginning, you might save for like an emergency fund or whatever it might be that you need to take care of right away. Maybe it's credit card debt, for example. But you need to be saving to be able to get to a point where you can invest, and which is the third part, and we'll talk about that. But right now, for me, from the perspective of the selfish guide, is to focus on reflection. And why reflection? Well, reflection is really important with life creep, because if you don't understand yourself and you don't know what it is to save for you, then you're not going to be able to get there. And we can't lie to ourselves. We need to face ourselves, be like honest and true, and face what that is. And that can mean different things for different people. So for example, for me, that was a very long but slow and steady path. I started about 20 years ago, and now I feel like I have the financial freedom where I can do what I want. Maybe not you know everything I ever wanted to do, but the things that give me joy I can do, and not feel obligated to do something just because I need to pay the bills, for example. Um, I have here Matt, which he decided to do it a different way, and in many ways I envy and am in awe, because the way he did it, I think, is very torturous in my opinion. But his method was 8 years of really saving and dealing with the lifestyle creep, but really extremely. Right, and be able to do that, and in some ways that's, I think, a lot harder, because that's like figuring out that you try lobster, you love lobster, and then keep eating ramen anyways, right? Like that, I think, is a lot more difficult. And so here's Matt, and he's going to tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. My journey to financial freedom really started when my dad passed away, and it really opened my eyes into something that I was working a job I didn't enjoy, and I wanted to put myself in a position. If I wanted to quit, then I could, right? And the only way that you do that is, you have enough money to do that. And so that started me on a whole new journey of like, okay, well, how do you get money? How do you make money? Uh, and as it relates to like life creep, right? That's so important because as you progress throughout your career, ideally you make more money, and you want to actually uh, figure out how much you're actually spending and what you're spending it on, and you do that by using a budget, right? I think that's really one of the most important factors when you're talking about life creep is, well, like, how much are you spending, where are you spending it on, and what are you spending it on. And before you are able to reach that financial freedom, you need to first establish a budget, find out where that money's going, and then once you have the budget, you can go in and start identifying things that you can, get rid of. And for me, it was about slashing as much as I possibly could, and saving as much as I possibly could. Now that might not be right for everybody, and I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone. But it was my journey, and everyone's gonna have their own journey.
Yeah, no, I mean budgeting is I think the where you can get started. Like right, reflection is definitely part of the selfish guide, but when it comes down to the nit and gritty, budgeting is going to be a big aspect to that. And more importantly, it's conscious budgeting. It's don't be afraid that you're spending $500 on coffee. That's not. I mean, we're not here to
That
judge.
is too much.
In other words,
That's
but
too
we're not
much.
here to judge. Okay,
Buy a
We're-
machine.
We're just here. You could probably buy a very nice one, $500. But we're actually here to understand where you're budgeting at and where you want to be. And for me, that works really well with percentages, right? Like how much percentage do I want my rent to be? How much percentage do I want this to be? When you start looking at that, it changes from like, oh, I'm going to go live at this place that is really small and have roommates to like, this is what I need to do to be able to save this percentage, right? Because I want to do X with that. Which brings you to the next point, which are goals. And I'm just going to touch on it a little bit, but they are important. Why we're doing these things, why we want financial freedom is going to be very critical in reference to motivating because it's going to get hard. There's going to be points where you're like, man, I could just be in a car right now and not being on this bus. And or I can be living in my own space instead of dealing with maybe an annoyance or pet peeve from a roommate. And you got to be like, no, this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I want to be able to do art. I want to be able to just, X, right? And that means financial freedom is going to get me closer to that or give me that. And when you have that, that's big because you're just like, no, keep hard. And, for you had that motivation with you after your father being like, I want to be able to, do X. And when you had a hard time slashing and cutting because it must have been massive, you were just like, it's worth it because I want that power.
It's hard. It's hard to go from an international business class flight to coach or economy plus. It really is.
Oh yeah.
But that's the sacrifice that you must make if you're willing to, if you want to achieve that financial freedom.
Or not flying at all, right? Like that. It just depends on the situation. Now, that being said, I want to clarify one thing, guys. I'm not talking about, luxury brands here or Rolexes or anything. We're talking about things that potentially could make your life better, easier, but you choose not to do them anyways, right? Especially in the beginning, because as we'll talk about in the third part, the earlier you can create investments, the better they're going to be because of compound interest, right? So we want to be talking about things that are actually things within your means. Now, that also goes for the flip side of that in reference to like if you are in extreme debt or in extreme poverty, this doesn't make sense. Okay, we're not talking to you. That's not going to make that much sense. And I understand that you might be in a hole and that well, the one thing I will tell you is don't be hopeless. You can start making decisions now to dig yourself out of that hole. It's going to be long and hard, but it's not your fault, right? You got in there, you fell in. A lot of people do, and it's nobody's fault. But now you can educate yourself to get yourself out, and it will be difficult. But once you do get there, you're going to be able to make these decisions with lifestyle creep. But long story short, the summary pretty much is lifestyle creep. Why is it important? Because it allows you to save. Now, the important part here is how do you get started, right? That's reflection in reference to looking at your budgeting, looking at why you want to do it, and how can you get started. All those things are going to be extremely important in reference to what's a good percentile for you that makes sense for your saving. Don't judge it compared to your friends or what you've heard. What makes sense to you? And lifestyle creep it just needs to be a part of it because you have to have that disconnect between what you're making and what you're spending. If you don't, it's impossible to have savings. But you have power over this. And so, but reflect and be honest with yourself and you can start to get there. We're about putting you in the right direction. Go and reflect and start budgeting and start figuring out what makes sense for you. But you can start saving today if you do this. And that's all we got. Hopefully that was helpful. And if you guys have any comments, please leave them below. Until next time, Matt, Carlos, Colton Vita, and stay curious, stay open, and stay true to you. Thanks again.
See ya.